record this for you. And the recording for last week should be in there. So welcome everybody. This is Thursday. We have finished our carbohydrate chapter. We're going to do a quick review, and then we're going to get into the carb case study that's due Sunday. So this is a little bit of a cheat sheet. I don't know, anybody looked in Blackboard to see if there are videos around the carb case study in Blackboard, or is it just the assignment? Anybody? I'll look in Blackboard here in just a minute, but let's just do a quick review. We were talking about the way dietitians actually plan the nutrient needs for athletes, and it's based on grams of that nutrient per kilogram body weight. And we said, when you look at this, that for carbohydrate, the range is pretty broad, from 3 to 12 grams. And that the reason that is because remember, carbohydrate provides the body with energy. And so if an athlete is, say, trying to lose weight and they don't need as many calories, most of those calories, when you're cutting calories, really should be coming from carbohydrate, because the nutrient needs for protein, the nutrient needs for fat really don't change nearly as much as they do for carbohydrate. And if you remember that, it's based on how much activity they're getting. And so if you're, like I said, trying to lose weight, then it should be around 3 to 4 grams. If you're, training for the Tour de France and you're out biking 5-6 hours, then yeah, you could get away with eating 10 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram body weight. And I showed you a slide that's from your text. So be sure you look at that, that basically most of our strength and power sports, the recommended amount is somewhere between 5 to 7 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram body weight. And then as you get into more of your running, your 10Ks, your half marathons, your marathons, some of these other really long Ironman triathlons, then yeah, you can work your way up to 10 grams. But again, what you may also find is that on some days you train really heavy, and then other days you train really light. And so you really need to be switching these up based on how much training you're doing. It's hard to, if you eat like 10 grams of carbohydrate a day, but if you're not training like like that, then that's going to cause a problem. You're going to end up gaining weight. And we did the math on these, and you can go back and watch this. Like there's the one where I said Lance Armstrong is at 10 grams, and you do the math. Just we'll come back around to that. Then the next piece we went into was looking at the importance of carbohydrate and how it actually improves performance. And just know that the advantage of carbohydrate is it's stored right where we need it. It's stored in the muscle. And then we have some in the liver and obviously some blood glucose, but the muscle is where we need it. But the problem is we have a limited amount, only about 2,000 calories, which is usually fine for strength and power type sports. But endurance sports, oftentimes you're going to need more than that, or you try to conserve that liver glycogen, right? Because we went through this whole process and how this works, where you start to use muscle glycogen first. As it starts to become depleted, then you start getting glucose from the blood, and then that blood glucose needs to be sustained. So liver then releases its glucose, its stored carbohydrate, into the blood, and eventually your liver becomes depleted, and that's when we hit the wall or bonk, typically in endurance type sports. But also what we talked about is the fact that that's the reason now we supplement with sports drinks. We went through that whole thing, right? So just understand those concepts. And then we got into the training diet. We talked about glycogen loading, the fact we don't have to glycogen load in ways that, and strategies we used to use where we'd run somebody to total glycogen depletion. We don't do that anymore. We just know that if you're eating a little more carbohydrate and then you're tapering off your exercise as your big event approaches, then that should load your muscles with glycogen well enough. And we talked about some of the problems with, glycogen loading is important, right? But basically the whole idea is to have as much energy stored as glycogen before your event starts. And even that doesn't necessarily mean that 100% of the time is going to improve your performance, because there's so many reasons and ways and things that affect your performance. And then we got into pre-exercise meals. You need to know these. You want a high carbohydrate meal or snack, low in fat, low in fiber. We talked about why. Obviously, uh, high carbohydrate meal is going to be. You want this to be higher glycemic index foods. You can call them junk if you want. You could get away with eating some of these not so good for you foods because your body's going to break them down and it's going to use them for energy. You want some carbohydrate that's going to be easily digestible. And typically you do this at 2 to 4 hours before your activity, and that's really because you want those calories to be broken down and stored as glycogen before you start your event. And you also want to get to the bathroom and make sure you're ready to go after eating that food. And then the further out you eat, obviously, the more foods you can consume. And I told you when I do Ironmans, they usually start at 7 in the morning. I'm usually up at around 4, and I know exactly what I'm going to eat. I eat about 700 calories before every race. I know I eat the same thing. Usually something simple: waffles with some peanut butter, some syrup, maybe a little bit of fruit on there, and ends up being about 700 calories. And then as I go down to the race site to start the race, I may just sip on some, sports drink or something. And then you get into the swim, and obviously you're not doing anything in the swim. But then as I get on the bike to bike 112 miles, I change into my bike gear, get out of my swim gear, and I stick all the nutrition for my first half of the bike in my bike jersey. And then as we go, I usually eat around 300 calories an hour. And I even have it planned out. Like I'm going to do, I'm going to do one Pop-Tart and I'm going to do a sports drink, so I've kind of planned it out to know exactly what I'm going to do each hour. And that usually works out best. And as we go through the race, you adjust as needed as you go through the race. So, and when you're doing this pre-exercise meal, it really just depends on how big you are, is how many calories you can consume. And then obviously you want to stay away from the protein, and that's what this, big protein like steak, you just don't want to do that. You can have a little bit of protein. You don't want a bunch of fat in the protein because that's going to slow digestion, but a little bit of lean protein is fine, or just a little bit of protein. Like I use peanut butter, okay? Because the nice thing about protein is it does help fill you up. And that's the last thing you want to do, is be hungry when you're out in the middle of your event. So just be aware of that. And then this is just a couple examples. You don't have to, get complicated with it. Real food is fine. And, even things like Rice Krispie treats. And we talked about that last time too. And then we got into during exercise, and this is the big thing. So when should you think about consuming carbohydrate during exercise? If your exercise is over 90 minutes for sure. And when we say 90 minutes, that means if you're going to exercise for 90 minutes, then you probably should start either drinking sports drink at the beginning, or at least alternating between water and sports drink. All right. If it's, like we did a run that's 20 miles. We did a couple 20-mile runs here recently. And I had some water, but I started with sports drink. Okay. And I used that sports drink along with some gels and things like that to get me through the 20 miles. But the guideline, in general is 30 to 90 grams. And this is the slide I think I want you to focus most on during exercise, is that under an hour, you really don't need any carbohydrate. If you wanted to do a little, you could sip on some Gatorade or something, that'd be okay. But the question is, do you really need those calories? And probably most of you probably don't, because you probably have enough glycogen on board to get you through, and store carbohydrate on board to get you through that hour training session. And then anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, this is the most common guideline, because most of us are exercising somewhere between, maybe an hour, 2 hours at the most. You don't see too many people exercising more than a couple hours straight. And, maybe you have a football team that, they practice for a couple hours, on a regular basis. That's fine. Just know that you probably could still use this guideline, because think about a football team. They're out there, but they're standing around a lot. Their plays are really short. So, as long as they have some and take some breaks, and they should be fine. But it's the endurance athlete, when you're trying to fuel on the go, that makes it more challenging. Okay. And I showed you this. This is from one of your pages in chapter 4. This is just showing you similar to what I described on the previous slide. And then we got into talking about solid meals versus liquid, and liquid is the best way to go because the more solid then, and it really depends on what the exercise is. If your exercise is like a running event, then that could be really hard for you because jostling around in your stomach, a lot of the solid calories is going to be hard to digest. And then the liquid just, it empties from your stomach so much quicker and gets to where you need it. Oh, good. Thank you. Let's see. I got a bunch of them in the waiting room. Okay, let's see. Got it. Thank you, Carolyn. All right, so they should be coming in. If you're just coming in, we're doing just a quick review. And then we got into showing you, and I didn't bring, last class, usually what happens is I bring some of these to class and I tear the top off and I let you sample them, but obviously can't do that now. But I did bring some, there are all kinds of different companies that make these sports energy gels. Goo is one of those, just GU. It's a consistency of icing, like cake icing. It's kind of thicker. One that like Ironman uses, like on the course and the race courses now, they all have sponsors. So Ironman has their gel sponsor, and it's Martine. Funny name, but it's more like Jello. Their consistency is a little different. And then, like I said, on the bike, I'll do everything because there's not as much jostling. You can eat more solid food. I'll eat cinnamon brown sugar Pop-Tarts. I'll eat a Rice Krispie treat. I'll eat at the halfway point, they have a bag that you can put anything in, like the halfway point of the bike and the halfway point of the run. I'll put in like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that I make in the morning before we go down to the race site. And I'll have a peanut butter and jelly about halfway through the bike, kind of as a treat. I might even throw in a Reese's peanut butter cup or something too, just for if I get a sweet tooth and I want something. But the thing is, after you're doing all of this that's so super sweet, oftentimes you don't want that. But I do like the chocolate. And then we got into looking at post-exercise meals. Remember, the two most important nutrients are carbs and protein. We'll get into protein in the next chapter. Carbs, obviously, to reform that glycogen. Protein to help start rebuilding and repair that muscle you just broken down and damaged. And then the guideline around carbohydrate is 1 to 1.5 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. You'd like to get that in, early when you can. But again, you don't have to just go crazy about it and be obsessive about it like you got to run to the refrigerator. Okay, and you don't have to go buy these fancy recovery drinks and all that either, and these recovery beverages as they promote it. I mean, you could just just eat some food that will work. If you want to do liquid, you could drink some sports drink after. That's fine too. Or if you want to do some chocolate milk, we talked about that. It's the right proportion, if you will, because we talked about that. There's not that many calories when you look at this. They do recommend about 10 to 25 grams of protein, even up to about 30-ish, depending on how big you are. And what we'll see in the next chapter is that the recommended dose of protein, I call it dose, protein per meal, is about 30 grams. That's about all your body can use at one sitting, if you will. If you're bigger, if you're a big 300-pound football lineman, then yeah, you could probably get away with a lot more. But for most of us, around 30 grams is what we can do. And again, post-exercise, we talked about those meals can be higher glycemic. Again, easier to break down, easier to restore those glycogen levels. And remember what I mentioned. I said there's 3 situations where there's one where you don't even need to focus on recovery at all. So you need to make this decision. Do I even really need to think about recovery? If you have a really light workout, that's another option. So if you either have a really light workout where, I'm going for a 30-minute run, I'm going for a little easy hour bike ride, which is probably what we're going to do here in a little bit, then you don't need to focus on recovery. And if you're done, unless here's the thing, if you got another intense workout, then that's a different story, like maybe the next day, but for most of us, just doing a little easy workout, you don't need to focus on recovery. Or like here, a picture of my wife when we're finishing a big race, we're taking some weeks off from training. So I'm not going to worry about recovery. I'm going to go have a, a big meal at my favorite restaurant. But then there are a couple times when you do need to focus on recovery is if you have another hard workout within like 36 to even maybe 48 hours, or you got a double where you're doing two hard workouts in the same day. Then yes, you may want to focus on recovery there. But oftentimes people, they do themselves a disservice because they think they need to recover from everything. If you go to the weight room and you do a little light workout, little light lifting session, you don't need to focus on recovery, okay? Because you didn't break your muscles down much. And that's where we got into talking about the chocolate milk, because chocolate milk has, and usually I'll have like a label. If you look on the label, they're going to have, usually we'll talk about like a 4-to-1 ratio of carbohydrate to protein, a 3-to-1 ratio of carbohydrate to protein, a 2-to-1 ratio. You talk about ratios of carbohydrate to protein. And the more intense workouts, then yeah, you can do 3 to 4, a ratio of 3 to 4 grams of carbohydrate per gram of protein. But then as you do some lighter stuff, you don't need to worry necessarily about that. And then I just gave you some examples of some just post-exercise meal, and nothing wrong with having a peanut butter and jelly sandwich post-exercise, right? That's what you got. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing. That was a quick 10, 15-minute review of the whole chapter. Any questions on that? Because what I want to do next is I want to go into Blackboard, and I want us to look at that carb case study. Does anyone have it in front of them right now, the carb case study? Anybody have it in front of them? I'm guessing you do have it in front of you. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share my screen here and see if I can find the right screen. So this is either A, you can go to Blackboard and just copy it and paste it into a Word document, which is what I tend to do. Let's see if this is the right. Yeah. So you should be able to see now. Everybody see this? Just type in the chat if you can see the carb case study. Yeah, okay, you can see it good. So this is homework that, again, it's not due till Sunday, but I thought we'd just go through and talk about these two case studies. One of them is really straightforward. The other one has some hidden nuggets in here, okay? So, and it's the first one. So let's just read over these real quickly. And then what I may try to do, and I've never done this before, anybody been in breakout sessions, breakout rooms? Have y'all done that before? I may try that and see. Yeah, I haven't tried. Yeah, so to let you work, because usually what would happen is I would have you work in groups, right, in class, and I would walk around the room and see if you need any help. Obviously, we can't do that, but there are breakout rooms. I thought, well, maybe we'll try, give you like 10, 15 minutes in a breakout room, and then come back. Question is it going to work? The question is, you're going to come back. Will you come back? And maybe what I do is I just give you a choice here and how you want to do this. So let's. We have a group of people in the classroom. I know you probably do, Ella. How do I get them in a breakout room? I don't know how that. I think the breakout, it actually just randomly chooses who goes into what group. So let's look at these case studies, and then we'll let y'all decide. If you want to do breakout room, that's fine. If not, we can. But the point of this is to get you to think about these case studies. And usually what I always say to students is what I want you to do in these case studies is to dig a little deeper, especially in the first one. Because I know at this point you're young and you haven't probably done any counseling where you counseled someone, but usually what you find when you counsel someone is that the first answer they give you is usually not the real problem. Anybody heard that before? Like what they first tell you, like when you say you talk to somebody and they want to lose weight and they're like, yeah, I want to lose weight. Well, why do you want to lose weight? To fit into my jeans? Okay, that's one answer. But why do they really want to lose the weight? There's really something deeper usually for people. And why have they gained this weight? Usually due to stress. Maybe they have some loved one that's in the hospital they're taking care of, or home or whatever. There's usually something else going on, something deeper. So let's read this real quickly. So take a look. I've given you now some time here to get this pulled up, have it in front of you, or you can just watch it on the screen. But Megan, she's a 15-year-old soccer player, very athletic, plays midfielder. So what's a midfielder? Any soccer players in here? Any soccer players? Compared to other like positions, what do we know about midfielders? Yeah, lots of running. So you're going back and forth. So it's a midfield. You're playing in the middle of the field, so you're going back and forth. You're not a goalie that's just standing there. And is noted for her speed and endurance. She's been trying to lose a few pounds to achieve a more comfortable playing weight, and therefore has decreased her carbohydrate intake from 65% to 40%. Lately, she's been feeling fatigued in the middle of her 2 to 3 hour practices and weekend games, and it's affecting her performance. Coach has suggested that she bring a water bottle filled with sports drink to her next practice. However, Megan dislikes the taste of sports drink and decides to find an alternative. She enjoys juices of any kind. Therefore, last Saturday, she filled her water bottle full of orange juice and drank diligently throughout practice. Halfway through practice, instead of feeling tired, she was nauseous and had some GI cramping and intestinal cramping. So the questions, two simple questions. What are the possible causes of Megan's earlier than usual fatigue? And the second question is, what dietary suggestions might you give to Megan to get her back to peak performance? So that was a lot. And so you have to, when you're reading these case studies, really dig deep and see. And sometimes you can't do that. If you're talking to a person one-on-one, it makes it easier. But obviously these case studies, they won't talk back to you. But what they will do is maybe reveal a few things. And the simple answer, and you can type this in A, what's the possible cause of Megan's earlier than usual fatigue? What's the simple answer? Somebody? Anybody? Yeah, yeah, yeah. She reduced her carbs from 65% to 40%. That's the easy answer. But if you dig a little deeper, what other questions should you be asking Megan? Okay, think about that for a second. What other questions? So that's the crux of the first case study. That's the easy answer in A is, okay, she reduced her carb intake. And then the second question, uh, was the juice the only thing on her stomach? I don't know. From the case study, it seems to be that way. It doesn't say that she ate anything before, which could go into B, right? B talks about what suggestions do you give Megan, right? So this is where you can go into talking about some of these recommendations that we talked about in the chapter that would help her, okay? So that's case study 1. We'll come back to it. Case study 2 is a lot more straightforward. We've got Justin, who's a 35-year-old, 165-pound recreational weightlifter. He's not a competitive lifter. He's not a power lifter or any of that. Bodybuilder, His goal is to build lean mass and lose fat. Isn't that everybody's goal? Interested in knowing what to consume for recovery after his workouts, since he lifts 5 to 6 days a week. Even though he's not a elite lifter, he's still in the weight room 5 to 6 hours. He's kind of a gym rat, sounds like. He's currently drinking a recovery shake that contains 45 grams of protein and 20 grams of carbohydrate. How much, it says, how much carbohydrate does Justin need after his workouts for optimal recovery? And then should he continue drinking his recovery shake? So this one is a lot more straightforward, and you're basically just using the guidelines that we talked about to do a simple calculation, and then talk about, does he really need to do this recovery shake? Okay. So those are the two case studies. What do you think? Do you want me to give everyone that's online now time to work on this, and then we come back together individually, or do you want to try the breakout rooms? Because I have a feeling that if I try, I don't think it records the breakout rooms, but when we come back together, it probably will. Question is, will I be able to bring you back? Okay. Peyton says individually. She's like, okay. All right. So here's what I'll do. It's your time. It's right 9:57. I will stop recording, but I will leave Zoom on, and then we'll come back at, say, 15 minutes enough, like 10:15. Is that enough for y'all? Yes, no? Yeah, okay. Let's start with 15 minutes and we'll come back. So just jot down, and what I'm basically doing is giving you time to do your homework here in class, which is what I would do if we were face to face. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and then I'm going to maybe hit pause on the record if I can do that, because I don't think there's a reason. I don't think there's a reason to record this. Yeah, I can pause recording. Okay, so we are back. It's been about 15 minutes, and you don't have to have all the answers, but at least I've given you time to go through this and kind of make some notes, and whether it's bullet points or you're writing complete sentences, that's okay. Let me go ahead and I'm going to share the case study again, and then we can go through it. Let me share my screen. Case study. And let me get my chat pulled up. How did you start? When you look at this and read through this, what stood out to you? What's anybody want to take a stab, a guess at what the really deep question is, the question you really should be asking? And I know we haven't covered a lot of this. We covered the recommendations, but some of this other stuff is just kind of, you have to be inquisitive. You have to want to learn and know more, right? The more questions you ask, the better you're going to be able to help someone. What's the deep question? Okay, so Gage asks something, and this is related. It says, actually, the fact that she's not comfortable in her own skin. What do you mean by that? And feels bigger than what she actually is? What do you mean by that? Someone help Gage out. What's the underlying challenge here with Megan? So she's a 15-year-old soccer player. She cut her carbohydrates, right? Which is the answer to the question. It's the possible cause, right? Earlier the fatigue, probably that's a good reason, is that she cut her carbohydrates. Maybe she skips meals. Okay, she drinks the orange juice. Okay, we'll get to the orange juice in a minute, because that's certainly a challenge, something you need to address. But before that, what's the big picture idea here? The big picture question you should be asking. I'll give you a second. Anybody, just throw something out there. What do you think? And you were onto it, Gage. You were onto that idea. Okay, so Ella says she may be struggling with comparisons of her teammates, maybe in terms of body composition. Okay, that's still, but just tell me what the. So Gage is saying she's not comfortable on her skin, feels bigger than what she actually is. She may be struggling with comparisons with teammate. Eating disorder, maybe, but what's just a simple, if you were sitting across the table from Megan, what would you ask her? Or what would you be thinking? Eating disorder, maybe, but we haven't gotten there yet. There's a question you probably should ask yourself and then ask her. Speed and endurance may not be your primary focus. Okay, that Kevin, you're onto it. You're all dancing around it. And sometimes, like I do on slides, the answer is in the question. The answer is in the right in front of you. The overall diet, okay, yes. There's obviously something there. She just cut her calories or instead of cut her carbohydrates. But what should you be asking? So Megan's a 15-year-old soccer player. The answer's in the question. Nobody? And this is something you could address with her. I'm trying to pull it out of you. Work with me here. Everybody else that's online, I got like 20 people here. What do you think? Just plain and simple. Come on now. What's the number one question you should? Is overworking? Well, she's playing soccer, right? She's got 2 or 3 hour practices. You know she needs to be fueling, but the bigger underlying question, yeah, okay, why does she go below? Yeah, why did she go that low? Okay, well, why did she present the question? The answer the case study. Why does she do that? Okay. So Karen, how much weight does she ideally want to lose? Here's the point in the general question. So the Carolyn's so close. How much weight does she ideally want to lose? What's a better question? What's her goal? Okay. What does she weigh now? I love this. This is even more challenging to do this online than it is face to face. If you had to ask Megan one question, what would it be? I don't know is what is what does she weigh now? That I mean that's important. Yes, that's it. Everybody pay attention to the answer to the question, which is the answer to where I've been trying to lead to. Why does she feel that she actually needs to lose weight? And here's the question for you. She's a 15-year-old girl playing soccer. Why does she want to lose weight? Why should she even be trying to lose weight at that age? You know, it's so ingrained that everybody wants to just lose weight, but at 15 years old, that's a pretty young age to be focused on weight. Everybody agree with that? Like, And someone put in the chat, if I can scroll back up, talk about eating disorder, right? You don't want to be promoting weight loss to a teenager because it just really can lead to a bunch of negative consequences. And in the case study, it says she's trying to lose a few pounds, right, to be at a more comfortable place. The question is, this is your job as a professional to assess that, and y'all were dancing all around it, like, okay, what does she weigh now, and what is her goal, and all this stuff. But the crux of the question is, should at 15 years old, should she even be trying to lose weight? You know, she's already practicing 2 to 3 hours, and then going to games. I mean, she's exercising a lot. So that's what, as I'm talking about digging deeper, that's what I mean by that. It's like, should she really even be trying to lose weight? Right. And that's going to, I think somebody even put this in the comments. It's to perform well and achieve that body. Usually what we suggest is that you get to your ideal body weight before, you get into that main crux of your season. In the off season, you work on body composition and those types of goals. And then as you get into your preseason and in season, you just focus on maintaining your weight. And we'll get into that in the body composition chapter, but it's hard to do both. And so the performance may suffer because you're trying to lose weight. And you can see here, so she cut her carbohydrates, to 40%, trying to lose weight. But the question is, she needs those calories, right? She needs energy for these long practices. And so you may have said in your comments around what suggestions to get back to peak performance, everything from making sure she's eating a meal before she exercises. And, you may have talked about, okay, so her practice is 2 to 3 hours. So she needs that 30 to, even maybe 90 grams of carbohydrate during her workouts. Anybody put something like that? And then the big question comes up too around the sports drinks. Anybody, what'd you put around the sports drinks? What was the big question about sports drinks? What'd you put? It says Megan's coach suggests that fill her water bottle with sports drink. However, she just likes the taste of sports drinks. What would you say to that? Switch back to water? Okay, yeah, she could do water and combine it with some chews or gels or something like that, something that would settle on her stomach. But what else would you say about the sports drinks? Says Megan dislikes the taste of sports drinks. What would your answer be to that? What would your question be? Is it calories or taste? Right? Okay. What have we talked about regarding sports drinks? That should trigger, just like the weight issue was a red flag earlier. The sports drink thing, what would you ask? It says, I don't like sports drinks. What would you say? What would you say to that? Yeah, there you go. So Vincent says, what sports drinks are you trying? Because that's exactly it, right? We've already talked about the fact there's a buttload of different sports drink companies. And within company, what do they have? Different what? In the chat. What do they have? Yeah, they have different flavors, So, and that's what you would dig in with her is like, okay, is it all sports drinks? Is it one brand? What are you trying now? Have you tried Powerade instead of Gatorade? Have you tried the Mountain Blueberry Blast versus the orange? I don't like the orange Gatorade either, right? But I can do the lemon lime. I can do these different flavors. And maybe it's even too concentrated, like the regular, because they have different versions, right? They have the version that's, high sugar, high calories, and they have like the G2 or whatever it's called, right? They have the lower, and maybe that would work. So the point is, I don't think she's really explored all her options regarding sports drinks. And yes, you could always water it down. That's exactly right. And you could also do that Because what's the problem with her doing orange juice, somebody? What have we talked about? What's orange juice have in it that's really going to be a problem? Mm. Well, too much sugar, but what type of sugar? There's a particular, anybody know? Okay, yeah, it's got simple sugar for sure, which is good, but what type is it? This is orange juice. Anybody going to get this? Fructose. Thank you. Perfect. Anna's on it again. The orange juice has a lot of fructose, and we talked about the fact that fructose in high concentrations will cause some GI upset. So either A, you get her to do a different type of sports drink, or you get her to do water and some food, or and you could do orange juice. Somebody put it in the chat before. What could you do with orange juice to make it work? I mean, you'd have to test it. Yes, you got to water it down. You put some water in there. You could dilute it. So there's some options there, and sometimes athletes, they just haven't really, they don't understand all the options that they actually do have. So that's the first one. That's the gist of it. You could have put all kinds of things around, pre-exercise meals and what to do during. And those are the two big challenges around the weight issue and the red flag around that, and then the sports drink. And then the second case study is a little more straightforward. So you got Justin who's lifting weights. How much carbohydrate does Justin need after his workouts? How do you calculate that? What was the and you need to know these recommendations for a test. You need to know, the different, under an hour, you do nothing or 30 grams. 1 to 2 hours, you need 30 to 60, which is the most common recommendation. 30 to 90, you can do more than 60, up to even 100 if you're doing activities over a couple of hours, but you need to practice this. But post-exercise, there's also a recommendation, right? What did you do the calculation? How much carbohydrate does he need post-exercise? What's the recommendation first? Somebody type it in the chat. What's the recommendation? Anybody remember? Nobody did the number two. You never got to number 2? Yeah, 1 to 1.5 grams. Good. So if Justin's 165 pounds, then you divide that by 2.2, get it into kilograms, and you do the math. And what does that work out to be? Yeah, 75 to 113 grams. Okay, so something like that in the ballpark. But right now, he's doing a recovery shake that has 45 grams of protein and 20 grams of carbohydrate. So should he continue to drink his shake? What do you think? Yeah, no, why not? What's the problem with the shake he's doing? You just said he needed 20. We needed like 75 to 100 grams of carbohydrate, and he's only got 20. Yeah, so there's too much protein and too little carbohydrate. Because we said really the 30 grams is kind of a optimal dose, kind of on the high end. Justin's not a big football player, so he doesn't need this extra protein. Usually around 30 grams is what we say. And that's why if you look at any protein powder, it's going to have somewhere between 20, 25, maybe up to 30 grams, and that's going to be it per scoop. So, or per serving, I should say. So no, so the answer is no. So that's the case studies. The first one was the challenging one where I wanted you to dig a little deeper. This, Justin, was pretty straightforward, but you had to know the math to do that. So does everyone feel okay with that? Stop sharing. I appreciate everybody hanging on with me and playing along. That's really all I have for today. I wanted us to go through the case study together. It's due Sunday night, so I've given you all the answers. But the thing is, not everybody will watch the replay. A lot of people won't watch this video, so they'll be working on their own. But hopefully that helps and kind of bring some of the sciencey recommendation stuff into practice as you're working with people, and it could be yourself as you're trying to improve your own performance. So that's it for today. And what we'll do on Tuesday is we'll come back and we'll start the protein chapter. Again, the focus of all of this, and you've seen this, is around exercise. What are you going to do for protein before, during, and after exercise? You need to know the basics around protein, but the recommendations are going to be the focus. Everybody good? Appreciate you hanging on with me and playing, and it seemed to work out doing the individual thing where I just paused the recording. So hopefully it's going to record and we should be all set. And I'll upload this. Had some internet trouble the other day, so that's why it took me a little longer. I didn't get the last one up till last night, but I'll get this one up as soon as I can. All right. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you later. Appreciate you hanging with me. All right. Bye-bye.